A very good morning to all our viewers. This is TV47 Breakfast. My name is Fred Indimuli on this lovely 15th of June 2026. A very chilly day here in Nairobi, at least. I don't know how the weather is elsewhere. We'll be taking a look at that later on. But a lot happening this week, both locally and internationally. We do expect that the World Cup is still continuing. Another African team, Egypt, will be facing Belgium tonight at 10. Germany, jana walichapa timu ingine inaitwa Curacao mabao 7-0. Still early stages, yes. An ongoing match right now. It's Tunisia versus Sweden. It's already halftime. Sweden are two goals ahead against Tunisia's 1 goal. That's another African team. At least kuna mmoja, Ivory Coast wamechapa Ecuador bao 1-0. I think that's the first win by an African team. No, I think, yes, should be the very first win by an African team at the ongoing World Cup in US, Mexico, and Canada. That is just part of the talking points. Remember, fuel prices. EPRA reviewed the fuel prices yesterday here in Kenya. So, starting this morning, a very slight drop on the price of a liter of petrol. Nimeona kwa gazeti moja wamesema hiyo ni manafuu ya peni mbili, because they've reduced about 0.22 shillings. Hiyo ni 22 cents only. Ndemepunguzwa hapo. So nothing much in as far as the difference between what the price of petrol last week and now. But at least for diesel, it's down 10 shillings further. Remember when it was 243 and the president intervened and it went down to 232. Now it's 222 per litre. Whether watu wa matatu watapunguza bei ya nauli, tunangoja kuona. Meanwhile, discussions around the budget continue, and that will be forming part of our discussion this morning on State of the Nation, the economy, following the presentation of the budget statement last week by John Badi, the CS for Treasury. What does it portend for the country? What does it mean for us? We'll be having a panel of economists later on, starting at 6:30. In as far as politics is concerned, mumeona ile moto ilikuwa Kakamega. President came back and went straight to Kakamega. At the same time, Rigathi Gachagua and his team were there. What does it mean? Meanwhile, in Thika, ule governor wa Mabarua, ule Muranga, Irungu Kangata, joined the Linda Mwananchi team, which had just a few hours before been welcomed the former LSK chairperson, Faith Odhiambo. And kama kuna something pulling people towards Linda Mwananchi. What is happening? What does it mean for our politics? That's a big discussion today. Matters, security and goons in politics. There was an attack at All Saints Cathedral here in Nairobi by goons who disrupted a discussion around the budget. And you wonder, why would you disrupt a discussion around the budget? I thought we are all supposed to be discussing this. So a lot of condemnation happening in that direction. Also the CS for Interior, Kipchumba Murkomen, condemned that attack. Other discussions, of course, the ongoing plans to set up that Ebola facility in Laikipia continue in earnest. And nilisikia watu wengine wakisema ati it's like they stopped. Nani alikuambia? Yeah, chunga sana. So these are the big discussions in and around Kenya. Globally, yesterday, President Donald Trump of the US tweeted saying that the conflict with Iran has officially ended, and he told all ships that were near the Strait of Hormuz that they can roll their engines now and move. Whether or not this will happen, you remember the back and forth, mara imefunguliwa, mara imefungwa. So according to the latest tweet by Donald Trump, the Strait of Hormuz has been reopened. What does that mean to the global economy? These are the big discussions this morning. And around this week, we'll be talking a lot about it. Of course, top for us today, the budget. We'll come back to that later. For now, you can interact with us throughout our show. We'll go all the way till 11, and we'll be having the Monday Blitz so that you continue breaking down the World Cup, what it means with the wins and the draws, plus the losses for African teams and others. So do stand by for the team Monday Blitz coming your way at 8 a.m. For now, get interactive. Our social media pages are open. TV47 Kenya on Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube, where we're streaming live. It is TV47 Digital on X. You can tag me directly at Fred Indimuli. Use the hashtag TV47 Breakfast, hashtag Story Yetu. Let's take a look at the weather. All right, this is how the weather situation is looking across most areas in the country. In the western part, Kakamega, mostly cloudy, highs of 27 degrees. It's a bit chilly at 18 degrees this morning. Makueni on the eastern side, highs of 29, mostly cloudy as well, lows of 16. It's the same situation in Isiolo, mostly cloudy but a bit higher temperatures there at 30 degrees this morning. Rather, highs of 30 degrees this morning, 19 degrees. In the Rift Valley, where the president was yesterday, it's cloudy as well, 24 degrees the highs, lows of 13 degrees. Light rains expected in Mombasa, where the highs will be 29. Quite comfortable weather even for the coast, lows of 22. And in Nairobi, more or less what we saw in Kajiado, this morning is 12 degrees. Actually feels colder than 12 degrees in Nairobi. Highs of 24 degrees. So hakuna joto sana Nairobi. Ni kama tumeanza kuingia July. Vaa sweater. That's the state of the weather this morning. I know it's the middle of the month. Pesa imeanza kupotea mifukoni. It is also Men's Mental Health Month. Shida ni nyingi. Let's get some inspiration this Monday. Quote of the day.
The strongest people are not those who show strength in front of us, but those who win battles we know nothing about. Remember, every small victory is a testament to your resilience.
Yes, it reminds me that whenever you're in a group or in a small area and then you find one of you is the loudest, yeah, usually that's the weakest person. Yeah, tulia boli. Let's come back and take a look at the newspapers. Alright, nafuu ya peni mbili ndio gazeti habari kuu kwenye kurasa wa mbele wa gazeti la Taifa Leo. Na ni ukweli ni peni mbili. Wakenya kuendelea kuumizwa na bei za juu baada ya bei ya mafuta kupungua kidogo tu. Bei za bidhaa na nauli zinatarajiwa kubakia juu baada ya serikali kupunguza bei ya mafuta ya dizeli kwa shilingi 10 na petroli kwa senti 22. Hiyo hata si ndururu. Ndururu ni senti 50. Wale wanaoelewa ndururu ni nini. Dizeli ndio hutumika zaidi kwa shughuli nyingi za uchumi kama vile uchukuzi wa umma na viwandani. Sasa dizeli itauzwa kwa shilingi 222 kwa lita, huku petroli ikiuzwa kwa shilingi kwa shilingi 214 jijini Nairobi. Mafuta ya taa ndio yamesalia kwa shilingi 191 kwa lita. Ndio habari kuu pale kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa gazeti la Taifa Leo, gazeti la Mwananchi. Ndio najua kuna gazeti la Mwananchi, lakini Taifa Leo ndio gazeti la Mwananchi hapa nchini. Habari za siasa zimepewa kipaumbele pia kwenye ukurasa wa mbele. Haswa habari za Linda Mwananchi, jana walitua Thika. Kinara wa mrengo wa Linda Mwananchi ambaye ni seneta wa Nairobi Edwin Sifuna amepigwa picha pale akihutubia wananchi katika uwanja wa Kivulini Grounds, Kiambu. Viongozi wengine waliokuwepo ni Gavana Irungu Kang'ata, Senator Godfrey Osotsi, Gavana wa Siaya James Orengo na Babu Owino. Sasa hii habari ya Linda Mwananchi iko hapa chini kwenye ukurasa wa mbele na bado pale juu, the top strip of this paper. Kang'ata naye aingia Linda Mwananchi. Ampigwa picha pale, ameshikana mkono na seneta wa Vihiga Godfrey Osotsi na seneta wa Siaya James Orengo. Ameinuliwa mkono pale. Wanasema mrengo wa Sifuna wazidi kupanuka baada ya kunasa window jipya Thika jana. Sema big win. Kumbuka ni siku chache tu baada ya aliyekuwa president wa Law Society Faith Odhiambo kujiunga na Linda Mwananchi pia. Tukisalia pale juu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa gazeti hili, wanasema likizo ya Gachagua hatari kwa DCP Olkalao. Kinara wa DCP elekea katika likizo ya siku 45 wa Munyoro. Alikuwa kule magharibi mwa Kenya wikendi, mwisho wa wiki jana. Lakini je, habari kamili ya Olkalao inauliza, will he be involved in the campaigns in Olkalao? Sasa Saba anasema anarejea nyumbani na atakaa kule kwa siku 45. Yeah. Vidokezo zaidi kwenye ukurasa wa mbele. Shule, wazazi wabebeshwa uzigo la migomo. Shule za wapa wazazi masharti makali huku wanafunzi wakirejea shuleni baada ya migomo. Lakini kuna zile shule ambazo hazijafunga, kuna wale wanarejea, lakini wazazi ndio watabeba mzigo. Macho kwa Uhispania na Ubelgiji leo ni mechi za kombe la dunia. Ubelgiji wakutana na Misri na Uhispania wakitarajiwa kuwa na kazi nyepesi dhidi ya Cape Verde. Masuala ya uchumi pia wanazungumzia hapa. Maskwota pwani kupata ardhi ya shilingi bilioni 5. Ni serikali imetenga kiasi kikubwa cha bajeti kwa ajili ya kuwasitiri maskwota wa pwani. Kurasa wa mbele wa gazeti la Taifa Leo. Vidokezo vingi kweli kweli. Kule nyuma masuala ya kombe la dunia. Mo Salah na Misri kwenye mizani ya Ubelgiji leo. Ivory Coast watafungua siku kwa kumenyana na Ecuador saa 8 ya asubuhi. Hiyo nafikiri ni kama imeshakwisha na Ivory Coast wakashinda. Nasikia watu wa Manchester wanapiga kelele, lakini hatutazungumzia hayo, ni kombe la dunia sasa. Kisha Cape Verde ipambane na Uhispania saa 1 usiku kabla Misri kufunga usiku na Ubelgiji saa 4 baadaye. So timu za Afrika, mataifa mane ya Afrika yataanza kampeni zao za kombe la dunia leo. Hiyo ni Ivory Coast washaanza kwa ushindi, Tunisia watakuwa wa pili, Misri na Cape Verde. Cape Verde pia ni kama Waafrika ama ni Waafrika. Masuala ya kombe la dunia, gazeti la Taifa Leo. Tukienda kwa gazeti nyingine tuende wapi sasa? Magazeti ni mingi hapa tu, uchaguzi ni wako tu. The Standard, it steers clear of matters politics, talks about internal security, ID cards auctioned. Auction in Kenya is the tag they have here. This newspaper today exposes a shadowy network through which foreign nationals from Somalia, Ethiopia, Uganda and other neighboring countries are obtaining Kenyan identity cards for as low as 15,000 shillings. The probe reveals how individuals with questionable backgrounds have acquired the country's most sensitive documents with apparent ease. Yet senior officials at the Department of Immigration and the National Registration Bureau have remained silent, as has Interior CS Kipchumba Murkomen. Who is behind the scheme, they ask? Who benefits? And what does it mean for national security and the 2027 elections? This story has been given the spread, pages 6 and 7 of this paper. A big story, Kenyan birthright on auction, inside illegal issuance of identity documents to foreigners. Only 15,000 shillings. You become a bona fide Kenyan. Yeah. So there are pictures of people who should be asked these questions there on the front page of this paper. Kipchumba Murkomen, the CS Interior. Julius Bitok, who's a former PS Immigration, former Education PS, now is in tourism. Kila mali anaenda kuna shida. Anaenda Immigration akitoka kesi. Anaenda Education akitoka kesi. Ushasikia kesi ya tourism. Acha tungoje. The current PS Immigration Belio Kipsang and Evelyn Chelugate, the Director General of Immigration. These are the people who should be asked and answer these questions. This main question they're asking here. Who's behind the scheme? Who benefits and what does it mean for national security and the 2027 elections? Remember, there are some people who had expressed fears that probably someone is trying to add to his vote base by giving out IDs. Whether or not it's true, I do not know. Page 2, a very interesting story about a Nakuru teacher who has gotten a green light to challenge Guinness World Record. His name is Fenwick Maloba, a teacher at the Menengai Senior School. Hapo ndo nilienda shule, Menengai. He's aiming to teach for 45 hours non-stop to demystify the subject. He's a maths teacher and prove learners that mathematics is not the monster many learners fear. Wakati wetu, huyu mwalimu anakaa ni kijana tu mchanga. Wakati wetu kule Menengai kulikuwa na mwalimu alikuwa anaitwa, nasahau jina, Musa Mukolwe, one of the best mathematics teachers. So definitely that school has good teachers in as far as mathematics is concerned. How Elon Musk's trillionaire status dwarfs Kenya's 4.82 trillion shilling budget. This is a very interesting story about the owner of X and SpaceX. and Tesla. So on Friday morning, Kenyans woke up contemplating the sobering realities of the national budget. Ours is 4.82 trillion shillings. Wanasema, if Elon Musk gave you $1 million, $1 million is about 129 million Kenyan shillings every day to spend, it would take 100 years to exhaust his fortune. Imagine, akupe 129 million shillings kila siku. He would need 100 years kuimaliza. He can actually fund our budget. His kama budget yetu ni 4.8 trillion. This man is worth 142.3 trillion. He can fund our budget for like 25 straight years, or he can fund the entire African budget. Other stories, Kulendani of the Standard, State House spent 11.6 billion in 9 months. Yeah. And they're talking about the spending fallacy. Supplementary budgets apparently water down main plan. So during the budget, they tell you one thing, then a few months later, they come with a supplementary and it ignores the entire plan. To the back page, Matters World Cup, given FIFA World Cup. Ancelotti says his players were nervous as Morocco hold Brazil. Yeah, Morocco walifanya kazi nzuri. Najua Afrika hawajafurahia sana na Morocco, especially after that boardroom decision to deny Senegal the Africa Cup of Nations, wakapatia Morocco. But at least imagine drawing with Brazil at the World Cup. It's no mean feat. Those are AFCON champions, Morocco. Najua utanikasirikia, lakini ni ukweli. Hao ndio wanafaa kuwa na kikombe. Senegal walinyang'anywa lakini wakakatalia kikombe. Si yao. All right, that's a standard. Hey, punguza hasira kwanza, punguza hasira. Watu wa Man U bado wako na hasira nyingi sana. Let's take a look at the Daily Nation. On the Daily Nation this morning, rapists roam free as DCI hunt Gen Z. This is an indication that there's no single main talking point in Kenya. The Standard has gone with ID cards. Taifa Leo goes with the fuel prices. Now Daily Nation goes with rape cases. Rape probe derailed after investigating officer is fixed over protests claims. They say it is a miscarriage of justice. 2 rape victims attacked 5 months apart in almost similar circumstances filed complaints at the Thita police station in Juja, Kiambu. But the attackers are still free because detectives from the Serious Crimes Unit of the Directorate of Criminal Investigations are preoccupied with tracking down suspected planners of Gen Z protests that the government fears are set for later this month. Hapo ndo wanashughulika. Kesi zile zenye zimetendeka hawana time ya hiyo. Wanatafuta Gen Z ndo wasiende barabarani maandamano. Tell you the priorities in this country. Kangata joins Linda Mwananchi as opposition leaders condemned goons. So yes, that move by Irungu Kangata the weekend, appearing at that thicker meeting by Linda Mwananchi, has sent ripples across the political landscape, not just with the government, but also those in what they call the United Alternative Government. They're not so sure, okay, fine, maybe they expected Irungu Kangata to go their way. Sasa amenda Linda Mwananchi, what happens next? Another story given prominence on the front page of the Daily Nation, MPs lobbied to enact compromise finance bill. Public pressure is piling on MPs to drop offensive proposals in the finance bill as the National Assembly Finance and National Planning Committee is expected to table a report on the proposed taxation measures in the House tomorrow for debate. So maswala ya finance bill now wameanza kuzungumzia, and it will be one of the biggest discussions. Parents to pay the price for unrest in schools. We've seen that story on Taifa Leo. And diesel prices dropped by 10 shillings, but no respite on petrol cost. Watu wa petroli, mambo ni pale pale. Parents pay the price for student unrest is a story on page 2. Imagine, even as parents continue to bury the dead, those who perished in the Utumishi fire, now we're getting wale ambao watarudi shuleni because dormitories were destroyed, their parents will have to pay. Why teachers are retreating from the disciplinarian role. This was discussed also in Parliament with many MPs talking about a return of corporal punishment, a possible return of corporal punishment. Watu wapigwe viboko shuleni. Je, unakubaliana na hayo? Yeah? That is one of the discussions now. They say changes in policy have left teachers with little authority, according to high school head teachers. Yeah, MPs open to return of the cane in schools is there on page 3. Yeah. Should we return the cane? Should learners in high school and primary school, if possible, be caned by teachers? Wakati wetu viboko vilikuwa ni kawaida. Unachapwa usipende, unachapwa usipende. Yeah. All right. On the back page, still matters World Cup. They say favorites France play Senegal in a group at MetLife Stadium tomorrow. That will be a nice, interesting game. France versus Senegal. Morocco on to another special World Cup run in New York. And more than 80,000 fans watched that match, the one against Brazil, where Morocco, the African champions, as it is right now, whether you like it or not, Morocco are the official AFCON holders. Najua wengi wanasema ni Senegal, lakini kubali, kama walienda boardroom wakasema hivyo, wewe ni nani? So our African champions held Brazil to a 1-1 draw. That's the Daily Nation. Let's take a look at the Star. Fresh, independent, different. Tough economy plunging small businesses into loan reliance. Survey indicates sector employs over 80% of Kenyans. I would just want to see the connection between the loans and small businesses in a tough economy. So small businesses are increasingly finding themselves trapped between rising operating costs and shrinking access to affordable credit, driving a worrying rise in loan defaults and threatening Kenya's most important engines of growth. Remember, from the budget statement that was read, there's a budget deficit of about 1.14 trillion shillings, which has to be plugged through borrowing, mostly domestic borrowing, meaning that government will eat up a lot of the money that is on offer from local banks. So wewe kama mkulima mdogo or an entrepreneur may not be able to access loans. So how do you keep your business running if you cannot access this kind of financing? Because government has eaten up most of that. Interest rates are high, and businesses are now citing weakening customer demand, rising fuel costs, higher input prices, and tighter household budgets as key factors undermining growth. Watu hawana pesa mfukoni, so they're not even spending. Kama una pesa una spend nini? Na hauna hata deni ya kuomba. All right, so those are the main discussions. The main discussion on the front page of the Star. It also has images here of the kind of political activity that took place at the weekend. We have the president in Kajiado with the ODM party leader, Oburu Oginga. We have the United Alternative Government led there by Kalonzo Musyoka and Eugene Wamalwa, that was in Western Kenya. And the Linda Mwananchi team, which has the biggest crowd here, as they held that meeting in Thika yesterday, where Irungu Kangata, the governor of Murang'a, joined them. And I think that's a very interesting addition to that team. MCS dealt blow as new bill hands county chiefs spending window. This is about county budgets. MCS sasa watakuwa na shida pale, and I think this is one of those discussions we should be having probably later this week on matters county spending and what the counties can do. They say governors are set to enjoy a significantly larger recurrent expenditure ceiling in the coming financial year if a new bill before the Senate is passed. Bado ijapita, lakini anything can happen. On the back page, more World Cup news. La Roya favorites, that's Spain. They began the World Cup quest against Cabo Verde in Atlanta opener. That game coming later today. Interesting game. Somali ref Artan to be paid in full World Cup fee. The Somali referee who was blocked from the US, where he would have been involved in the World Cup matches, will now be paid a full fee. Whatever amount he was to earn at the World Cup, it will be paid to him in full. Remember, shapata deal nyingine kule Europe, he'll preside over a match there. So not so bad for him. Finally, as far as Kenyan dailies are concerned, Business Daily, central bank to lift caps on emergency loans issued to banks in distress. Makini schools post 60.7% net profit jump. Yani shule zina post profit. 545 million shillings in profit, Makini schools. Where? On the ticker, Treasury takes aim at biased debt payments. Kiki puts new capital target at 194 billion, and Kenya primed to reclaim edge as Africa's aviation hub sprint intensifies. There's only one more paper that we've not looked at from the Kenyan dailies, and that's People Daily. Wanasema nini leo? Wanazungumzia matters, technology and politics. So they talk about algorithms and deep fakes, the digital battle for Kenya's 2027 polls or vote, artificial interference, and I'm sure you've seen the use of artificial intelligence or AI developed photos. So watu wengi hawajui kweli kutoka kwa uongo. In fact, many are using even voices and placing their things that these people would not ordinarily say. Kuna shida. So that is the main discussion on page 4 of People Daily. Kenya boosts Ebola preparedness as quarantine facility debate intensifies. That's on page 14, and that's the only mention of Ebola in Kenya. And Kangata, new direction as he joins Linda Mwananchi bandwagon in Thika rally, also finds space. So I think that's the biggest discussion, political discussion today. Irongo Kangata at the Linda Mwananchi rally. Let's go regional now, and we start off with the East African, the weekly paper. Now, this one has brought together all the budgets of the East African countries that were presented last week on Thursday. So they say tough times for East Africa's taxpayers. With rising debt and shrinking funding from the West, states are looking inwards to fund expanded budgets, and citizens are in for a squeeze. So Kenya, of course, with the biggest budget there, 37 billion shillings, dollars, $37 billion. Tanzania comes second with 23.9 billion, Uganda with 22.5 billion, and Rwanda, $5.3 billion. So Kenya is still the biggest budget. And the deficit, we still have the biggest deficit at 5.5%, followed by Rwanda with 5.4%, Uganda 5%. Tanzania has the least budget deficit at only 3% of the national budget. Yeah, that's the East African today. Twende Uganda. Wanazungumzia nini? They seem to have moved on from Anita Among. Inside Otafire's fight with police, there's a retired General Kahinda Otafire, the former Minister for Internal Affairs. He did not have kind words about the leadership of the Ugandan police force as he handed over office to Ephraim Kamuntu, saying the institution is riddled with extrajudicial killings, but police say the claims are a blackmail. That story covered on page 4 and 5. It sounds very much like what we hear in Kenya about police. That's Tanzania, and that's the only paper we have from Tanzania. From Uganda. I beg your pardon, from Uganda. In Tanzania, we have both the Citizen and the Mwananchi. The Citizen talks about experts urging caution amid budget scrutiny. So in Tanzania, they're still talking about matters budget. Remember, all our budgets in the East African region were presented on the same day, Thursday last week. The Citizen continues with that discussion. In Kenya, we seem to have moved on from matters budget, but it is our main discussion today. Gazeti la Mwananchi kule Tanzania, wabunge mtegoni, wadau, masuala ya bajeti tu bado, mjadala wa bajeti, wadau watoa angalizo huku wakipendekeza maeneo nyeti ambayo wabunge wanapaswa kujikita kuyapigania. Imo mifumo ya ukusanyaji mapato, huduma za wananchi wa kawaida na gharama za maisha za guswa. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa 4. Habari nyingine ya kutatanisha pale ni utoto wauzwa kwa 2,000 shilingi za Tanzania migodini. So children and child labor for only 2,000 bob. Ugandan, Tanzanian money, that's less than even 1,000 shillings in Kenya. In Tanzanian mines, they're using children for that work. Gazeti la Mwananchi kule Tanzania. Now those are the papers, both regional and local. Let's now take a look at the cartoons in our Kenyan newspaper this morning. Tuone wanazungumzia nini. The first cartoon, this is the one on, that's a Daily Nation. Today it's Aiga. In matters Ebola, there's a plane landing with a US flag, and politicians have been very quick to open or to roll out the red carpet with a mountain on the background. Remember this facility or the supposed facilities in Laikipia. Meanwhile, wamebarricade kwingine, wanasema stop Ebola screening, but there's a red carpet for others. So the Ebola debate continues. The cartoon on the Standard focuses on Linda Mwananchi, and we have the former president of the Law Society, Faith Odhiambo there. Amevalia jezi la Linda Mwananchi as she looks at the ball ya 2027 and says, I've dribbled past cases, I've juggled in petitions, and now I'm ready to score goals here. Linda Mwananchi. Jezi number 9. Cartoon on the Star talks about fuel prices. EPRA giving something, alafu jamaa hapa anaivuruta ndio itoke na kamba ina mnyonga. So fuel prices has turned into a rope, the fuel has turned into a rope that's hanging the common mwananchi. EPRA inawambia there, I have loosened it. Loosened? Really? 22 cents. We can work together. There's a statement on the cartoon on the People Daily. Kuna kiatu kimoja kikubwa pale na watu wawili, Kalonzo Musyoka na Edwin Sifuna. Remember there were different rallies. Kalonzo Musyoka in Western, Edwin Sifuna in Thika with his Linda Mwananchi team, but they seem to be suggesting that they could work together and move on in tandem. And I know you must have heard of people proposing a ticket between Kalonzo and as president or as presidential candidate and Edwin Sifuna as his running mate. Probably one of the most exciting, and as far as political discussion is concerned, tickets that so far suggested. We're not saying it's reality, we do not know what will happen, but this is just what some people are saying should happen. What do you think? These are the cartoons today. Matters politics, fuel prices, Linda Mwananchi. So Linda Mwananchi gets a lot of discussion even in the cartoons. So just before we take a break so that we can come back with the state of the nation, let's take a look at the traffic this Monday morning in and around the city. I'm just looking at the entire stretch of Thika Road and it's very heavy. I think it's the heaviest traffic today. More traffic there on Thika Road, more than even the Eastern Bypass, which at least the last 2 weeks we've been checking as well. So a bit of traffic, quite some traffic opposite KU. On the direction heading towards town, Kahawa Sukari, Kahawa and Dani Stage heading towards Githurai, a lot of traffic there. More traffic as you get closer to Kasarani. After that, even more traffic as you get closer to Garden City. And then a stretch of red all the way from Safari Park, but now heading towards town, all the way to KCA University. Then it stops immediately there. I don't know what's happening. There could be an incident there, but there's a lot of traffic all the way from Safari Park on the opposite direction heading towards town up to KCA University. A brief, I can see after KCA University, there's some relief for motorists there, not much traffic, but once you get to the Utalii Drift, traffic in Arudi Tena all the way up to the Pangani Interchange. Kiambu Road also from DCI all the way to Muthaiga and the Pangani Interchange. Eastern Bypass not so bad this morning, but bits of traffic around Utawala and the KQ headquarters. More traffic along the fence of the JKIA all the way to Cabanas. Outer Ring Road not so bad this morning. Jogoo Road, especially around Makadara kama kawaida. City Stadium roundabout, and a bit of traffic around Mudhurwa next to the bus station. Haile Selassie Avenue, it's building up, especially around the railways roundabout as you get into the city. Mombasa Road, it's looking good all the way from the airport to the CBD. Also Wayaki Way on the opposite side heading towards town, it's not bad at all. Junction along Ngong Road, a bit of traffic as you get to that junction, inaitwa junction. Prestige Plaza building up, and also at the City Mortuary roundabout. Typical Monday morning traffic, but not so bad this morning, especially for the Eastern Bypass. It's much easier. Exactly 34 minutes past 6. Remember, you can interact with us through our social media pages on X TV47 News, on Facebook, on X TV47 Digital, on Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube. It's TV47 Kenya. Hashtag Story Nietu, hashtag TV47 Breakfast.
mean? You have my rent?
Leo jioni kama tutakuwa tumelipa rent nauza hii simu yako.
Hamna pesa. I need 3 G's to make my nails today.
Sasa hivi natuhusu aje?
Can I order now? Do you ship? Can I get blinking ones?
Mimi nilikuwa na trade. Nimewekelea kitele yangu. Kitele yangu na trade. Ikikunyuma.
Oh my God, you left me. Nitumie ni line.
Uko nje kuna wifi.
Why? High five?
Wait, so what do we call this dish again?
I have no idea.
The cucumbers are there specifically for my beauty routine.
Tamulini kero make a beauty product.
Na ameenda.
Tunafaa tukuwe na logo yetu. Like, si ni brand already.
We won't entertain divas.
No. I'm not dealing with a man child.
Amazing. Nishapenda hii energy.
Sundays at 8:30 p.m. on TV47. Saturday at 8:30 p.m.
My father used to tell me that our hotel is the home for travelers. I guess I forgot that. Recently, it's been more of a mirror of my own ambition. Booyah! We might fail. We will probably fail, but not for a lack of trying. So for the last time, and the first time, welcome to Connect In, the best experience in Eastern Central Africa and its environs.
Saturday at 8:30 p.m. on TV47. Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m.
This is a very serious place.
I see that. Surely. Hey, Nyumba.
This is the place.
Just for a few days.
Rule number 2.
Kwani Google inajua maisha yangu wewe?
That's my seat.
It's a chair. It was hers.
You're new here?
Yes.
You learned the rhythm.
This place is run by structure. Structure.
It is a system. Ni venye tu ni system haisikizi.
And what happens if something you haven't chosen enters your day?
I remove it.
That's not always going to be possible here.
Then you are going to have a problem.
Noted.
What are you planning? To escape from a resort?
This is not a resort, my friend. This is a storage.
Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. on TV47.
Nairobi, where the hustle never sleeps and neither do the scammers.
Link up, we are talking about something that's affecting all of us. We are talking trust.
We're diving into the campus life.
Stay fresh, stay safe.
Stay linked up.
My father used to tell me that our hotel is the home for travelers. I guess I forgot that. Recently, it's been more of a mirror of my own ambition. Booyah! We might fail. We will probably fail, but not for a lack of trying. So for the last time, and the first time, welcome to Connect In, the best experience in Eastern Central Africa and its environs.
This is a very serious place.
I see that. Surely. Hey, Nyumba.
This is the place.
Just for a few days.
Rule number 2.
Kwani Google inajua maisha yangu wewe?
That's my seat.
It's a chair. It was hers.
You're new here?
Yes.
You learned the rhythm.
This place is run by structure. Structure.
It is a system. Ni venye tu ni system haisikizi.
And what happens if something you haven't chosen enters your day?
I remove it.
That's not always going to be possible here.
Then you are going to have a problem.
Noted.
What are you planning? To escape from a resort?
This is not a resort, my friend. This is a storage.
You have to be very careful. Fake money can kill business. Na leo mko rada yangu.
Small money, kapesa kadogo, big behavior.
I only have big notes.
Alikuwa anatafuta courage.
Yani nafaje kutengeneza kachumbari na manyanya zinakaa hivi? Ona, hii ni kama kiwaru.
Hiyo inaitwa commitment to the lie. Amejicommit.
Ndio hiyo. Mpatie.
Unajua kama una mtu kitu, hata tu salamu ya kawaida inakaa kama reminder.
Habari yako?
Sintalipa kesho.
Kesho gani when?
Si kesho ya kesho ya tomorrow.
Hiyo tena. Mzee ni budi nikamchoka.
Ni budi ya madeni.
Tuesdays at 8:30 p.m.
You have to be very careful. Fake money can kill business. Na leo mko rada yangu.
Small money, kapesa kadogo, big behavior.
I only have big notes.
Alikuwa anatafuta courage.
Yani nafaje kutengeneza kachumbari na manyanya zinakaa hivi? Ona, hii ni kama kiwaru.
Hiyo inaitwa commitment to the lie. Amejicommit.
Ndio hiyo. Mpatie.
Unajua kama una mtu.
President William Ruto has dismissed criticism over his frequent travels, saying his movements across the country and abroad are driven by a commitment to transform Kenya's economy. Speaking at Nkarusha Seventh-day Adventist Church in Kajiado County, the president said leadership demands constant engagement with wananchi, investors and global partners to unlock opportunities for the country. ODM party leader Oburu Oginga, who was also present for the service, equally was in defense of President William Ruto over criticism of his frequent county tours, dismissing claims that the visits amount to premature campaigning.
And Your Excellency, I can tell you that the type of energy you have, moving all over the country, jumping up and down, I have never seen any president doing that since I was born.
Saa zingine wanasema mbona rais amekuja kutoka ng'ambo juzi, amekuja akaenda sijui kufanya mkutano na watu ya Marsabit, ametoka hapo ameenda Kakamega, ndio huyo ako Kajiado, sijui atakuwa wapi. Hiyo ni kazi ambayo mimi niliamua kufanya.
The leader's remarks come as Ruto prepares to travel to France for the G7 summit, where he says he will represent the interest of the African continent. Ruto noted that Kenya has increasingly emerged as a key voice in international affairs, citing major events hosted in Nairobi and the country's growing role in advancing Africa's development agenda.
Ukiangalia diary yangu imejaa miezi 6 mbele kila siku. Lakini ni kwa sababu hii nchi, kubadilika kwa hii nchi inataka bidii.
The president also defended his administration's economic priorities, pointing to increased investments in agriculture, education and healthcare under the 2026-2027 budget, targeted at lowering the cost of living, improving access to education, and strengthening Kenya's competitiveness in the global economy.
We are not going to beg in the international market with a heart in every capital begging. We want to trade with them.
We are making progress, demonstrable progress. Na tumekuwa na favor ya Mungu.
The head of state further challenged Kenyans to embrace hard work and productivity, citing countries such as South Korea, Singapore and Malaysia as examples of nations that have achieved rapid economic transformation through strategic planning and sustained investment. For TV47, I'm Linda Alela.
All right, I will keep flying. That's a declaration by President William Ruto, despite criticism of State House spending. He's been told that he's been traveling too much. This is not the first time that this kind of criticism has gone the president's direction, but he says he will continue. This week he's going to France for the G7 summit. Yeah. So today, of course, we'll want to take a look at a lot of the budget stories. On page 8 and 9 of the Standard, spending fallacy, supplementary budgets, watered down main plan and alter projects. And the next page talks about the spending by State House, where the president's traveling costs are domiciled. It says State House spent 11.6 billion shillings in 9 months. Yeah. Initially, the budget 2025-2026 had allocated 8 billion shillings to State House. Through the supplementary budget, that went up to about 17 billion shillings. This time, this budget has given the State House about 12 to 13 billion shillings. And a lot of that will definitely go towards the president's travels abroad and locally as well. So in as far as matters budget are concerned, issues to do with the supplementary budgets and what they do to spending, we'll be talking about that. Small traders sink into debt and tough times. And that is the front page of the Star and the main story there, especially after the budget statement was read. And those two bills, the budget itself, the budget estimates, and the finance bill will be presented to Parliament tomorrow for debate and approval after the statement was read last week by CS Mbadi. So on the issue of debt, which is a bit one of a talking point, it's a going concern. Of course, 1.14 trillion shillings budget deficit, most of it to be plugged through domestic borrowing, meaning businesses are stifled when it comes to access to credit. What does that mean? That's a story on the Star today. On the Standard, pressure mounts, or Daily Nation, pressure mounts on MPs as Kenyans businesses call for finance bill compromise. These are the taxation measures, part of the bills that will be presented in Parliament tomorrow. And so, matters finance bill, a big discussion. For this conversation this morning, we're privileged to have Professor Fred Ogola, who's an economics and governance expert, also a presidential candidate. Karibu sana, Professor.
Thank you very much, Fred.
And next to him, we have FCPA Hesbon Omolo, a governance expert.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, let's start from the president's travels. This, from the moment he became president, I think the first year, a lot of the discussions we had, and Professor, you were here, was about the president traveling a bit too much. In your own assessment, have these travels been beneficial? The president, in his own defense, says, yes, as I go, this is where we get the money to do what we are doing right now.
Yeah, first of all, Fred, let me say that President William Ruto was already a traveling man even before becoming president. Mm-hmm. If you look at even the run-up to 2022 elections, he traveled more abroad than Raila. Look at when he went to New York, he went to Washington, he made a speech, he came to London. He did all those overseas trips. He made so many pastors in so many places abroad there. He traveled to some African countries, and that's the case. But you see, this has been a tradition. Even, you remember the shuttle diplomacy that was done by Kalonzo Musyoka. Mm-hmm. So all these things are not new. What I would point out, which is very clear, is that a true measure of an overseas trip can be seen in the following things. How much does Kenya expand global trade? How are we growing in our exports abroad? Because those are some of the bilateral agreements being done. Secondly, how much are we gaining foreign direct investments? Mm-hmm. And then thirdly, how have we improved our diplomatic relations with people who are not really working with us closely? And the answer is the following, that we haven't expanded our diplomatic outreach in spite of these travels. So that means that those travels are more personal mm-hmm. than actually their states. Secondly, foreign direct investment is going more to Ethiopia. They are going more to Tanzania. They are going more to Rwanda with no equivalent travels. Mm-hmm. Why is Ethiopia getting more foreign direct investment than Kenya, while the president of Ethiopia is not traveling as the president of Kenya? And lastly, our exports are not growing because we are having trade imbalance. We are importing more than we are exporting, and tea exports, coffee exports are shrinking. Even apparels are shrinking. And also we are exporting goods which have not been given value addition. So that is not the best way. But Fred, let's analyze this. When I become president, what do we need to start by doing? We start by improving the fiscal policy at home, domestic fiscal policy, financial policy, to attract investors. Dangote was here during the France-Africa Summit. Tony Olomide was here. But immediately, we increased our fuel prices, taxes went up. Kenya is less attractive to trade. Kenya is the worst in Africa in terms of ease of doing business. We are only better than South Sudan, which is a state we created. We are only better than the last born of Africa. So before you go out, Fred, when you left your house today, I'm sure you must have dressed up and looked at yourself in the mirror and said, I'm ready for outside. So is Kenya ready to be taken outside? If you go sell a rotten banana, it does not matter how long you take. The chaos at home, Ebola shouts are here. When we hear, even when last time when the king was coming here, Kenyans are showing the media, don't come. Last time the vice president of the US, Vance, was supposed to come here, the Kenyans said, don't come here. So Kenyans in social media are already telling people that this is a mismanaged economy.
Right.
I'm looking for a point when we do our internal policies that people are actually telling people, young people should be tweeting by saying, come visit my country. It is the time when now these foreign visits will make sense.
Okay. But can we say that it's been all useless visits by the president? Definitely, there must be something positive that can come out of all those hundreds of visits since he became president.
I think to some extent, some of those trips have not resulted into tangible investment opportunities, but there are quite a number of tangible opportunities you can count. As recent as his visit to Brussels the other day, I think there have been agreements around how we can export more tea. And of course, we've also had, I think the most visited country the president has been to is Tanzania. And I think a lot of challenges around how we relate to that country has been addressed, including certain tensions around tariff for common commodities between our borders. So I think there's a lot you can talk about that are positive, even in China. The kind of programs or investments that have been unlocked between the two countries. So I think it's not all gloom and doom. So it is not right to say that all those trips have not yielded anything.
But perhaps the biggest issue Kenyans have is now the spending by State House. That over time we see that the spending, the budgetary allocations are going up, and people are asking, what exactly is this president doing with this money? In comparison, even to his predecessor, that in 4 years he has spent 90+ billion shillings and counting, and yet in President Uhuru Kenyatta's 10 years, he spent the 90 billion shillings as well.
I think the two presidents, the current president and the former president, have different leadership styles. And as Ogola has rightly put it, even before his election as president, he had more international trips in terms of building networks as a deputy president. But even before then, remember at a national scale, the president came late into building political networks beyond our borders. Unlike his predecessor, Uhuru, who had been there and inherited a network from the systems that operated from way back when his father ruled the country. It was much easier for him. The Honorable Raila Odinga, the late the Lord rest his soul in peace, built his political network globally over a very long period of time. So I think for President Ruto, it's been more of a lot of catch-up to do that, that kind of shuttle diplomacy to just build networks and alliances across the globe. But I think that has extended into his presidency. Then besides that, the leadership style of President Kenyatta, President Ruto are totally different. Ruto is more of a hands-on leader. He would, yes, delegate, but he also check, are you doing what is required? So he does a lot of follow-up around his program. And that's why you see, even domestically, he's done a lot of travels. He's gone to almost every corner of this country. There are places he's been to almost like Nyanza. I think President Ruto has been to Nyanza as many times as all the previous presidents have been to Nyanza. You combine Kenyatta 1, Kenyatta 2, Kibaki, and and all that cannot match what is done in that region. So I think there is something about his style of leadership that may not necessarily be the same as his predecessors, but also there is also a realization that in terms of inspection of development projects across the country, we have to give it to the president that he's tried to do much more across the entire country. Of course, the argument could be, can you do it remotely? But of course, as a country, we also know that we have had a very fractured kind of relationship when you have the president and his deputy being at loggerheads at a very early stage of their political union as they run the country. You can be sure that if there's likely to be a loss of political support somewhere, then there could be some hidden nuances around how do I compensate for my lost or perceived loss of support in certain areas. So sometimes you've got to be ready.
All right.
And I think probably there could be that element of politics also involved.
And he's been very keen to ensure that his footprint is seen and felt across the country. Probably, as my husband says, we probably just got ourselves an expensive president. But even the construction of the number of state lodges, in places like Wajir, Embu, and I understand even Meru, they're developing another one.
Homa Bay.
In Homa Bay. And some of them, you can actually tell they're like 150 kilometers apart. Do you agree that probably his style may work for him, but yes, we got ourselves a costlier president?
Fred, I think the fundamental thing to look about, first of all, to judge the foreign trip is, do Kenya have a foreign policy? Because with the foreign policy determines how they work. I work closely with the Vatican in some other ways. And the Pope does not just leave to go travel. There's a foreign policy. For example, the head of foreign policy in the Vatican is called Cardinal Parolini. The Pope can't just wake up and say, I'm traveling. Here, who is in charge of that travel policy? Because there must be a travel policy. We cannot just operate like it is your style. Kenya is governed by the sovereign will of the people. We can't have someone says, you just wake up and depends on your style, you do things according to your style. We have a state.
Even locally, he's allowed to
no, even locally, there must be a policy. You know, policy is important, Fred. We can't just say it depends on you. Do you know, with the good policy, with the good systems and structures, not so good president cannot be too bad. But without that, a bad president can be terrible. Look at Trump, for example. There are some things Trump wants to do that American policy can't allow him. He can't bulldoze those systems. So we can't just say we have a president who is having a different style. Kibaki did great on a wheelchair. And the impact was seen everywhere.
He wasn't moving
in
much.
Every classroom felt him. But here we have speeches, governmentizing by giving speeches. I have done this, I have done that. And also these speeches are not true. There are so many misinformation, disinformation happening. Let's go to Tanzania, where he was making a speech in front of Samia Suluhu. And he claims to have invested there, and Samia says, I'm not aware. So there is no foreign policy. And I want to, without bashing at him, the Kenyan foreign policy, when I was Kibaki's economic advisor, we said depends on three things. One, peace with neighbors. Peace, coexisting with neighbors and other nations. So everything, this visit should be, how do we expand peace with neighbors? Two was about prosperity. How can these visits create prosperity in terms of foreign direct investment, in terms of trade, in terms of economic tangible benefits that Kenyans are getting? The last one is competitiveness. Can these visits make us much better? For example, Samia Suluhu decided to go to Russia. And then Russia, thinking that they are working with Russia, Russia throws very good money at them. You understand? Investing in the manufacturing of drugs, isn't it? Investing in the value addition in agriculture. And that investment actually is tangible. I was analyzing this in one of the media houses based in Russia. So for us here, what we are counting is trip after trip. Then after this trip, the goodies we are being told don't come. I remember the state visit which was given to the president when he went to the US, his first state visit to the US. The list of billions of shillings and trillions of shillings which were written down were very many. I'm sure you know those figures. But we are still having a deficit. Why are those things not filling the holes we have in the country? Fuel prices are going up. We are being told the dollar is hitting us. Why can this correct the problem which is in the economic? It's not travel. One, the high debt. Why is he not even spending time negotiating European Union, European Central Bank, IMF about them, isn't it? Two, we are having unemployment. He claims to be creating employment abroad while creating none at home. You get me? Why not go abroad, attract companies abroad, come set up in Kenya, then create these jobs for young people right here?
All right.
The other problem we're having is inflation. How is he betting money to invest in value addition, in primary production, secondary production? For me, those should be priorities. Right. So let me tell you why State House expenditure will go up when I finish. State House Nairobi is 740 acres. It has been turned to be the largest restaurant in the world. If you go to State House, you'll find all these people, everyone is eating and drinking and merrymaking. Now, he's expanding more. How can one person have over 50 beds available to him at any given time? Right. While Kenyans, some of them are actually sleeping on a mat. Okay. So when you're talking about leading a country this poor, how can one person have access to over 50 beds you can sleep at will? While your people you're leading are sleeping on a mat. For me, that's where the economy is.
Thank you, Professor, for that. Let's take a short break. We'll continue discussing the budget and the issues arising from the budget. The two bills will be presented before the National Assembly tomorrow morning, but the statement was read out last week, and that is what we're discussing with these experts in studio. See you after the break.
Good morning.
You have my rent?
Leo jioni kama tutakuwa tumelipa rent, nauza hii simu yako. Hamna pesa.
I need 3 G's to make my nails today.
Sasa hii inatuhusu aje?
Can I order now? Do you ship? Can I get blinking ones?
Mimi nilikuwa na trade. Nimeekelea kitele yangu. Kitele yangu na trade. Ikikunyuma.
Oh my God. He left me. Nitumie ni live.
Uko nje kuna wifi.
Why? High five?
Wait, so what do we call this dish again?
I have no idea.
The cucumbers are there specifically for my beauty routine.
Tamulini kero make a beauty product.
Na ameenda.
Tunafaa tukuwe na logo yetu. Like, si ni brand already.
We won't entertain divas.
No. I'm not dealing with a man child.
Amazing. Nishapenda hii energy.
Sundays at 8:30 p.m. on TV47. Saturday at 8:30 p.m.
My father used to tell me that a hotel is the home for travelers. I guess I forgot that. Recently, it's been more of a mirror of my own ambition. Ooh, yeah. We might fail. We will probably fail, but not for a lack of trying. So for the last time and the first time, welcome to Connect In, the best experience in Eastern Central Africa and its environs.
Saturday at 8:30 p.m. on TV47. Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m.
This is a very serious place.
I see that.
Yes, welcome back. This is TV47 Breakfast. We continue dissecting some of the issues that are coming out of the budget statement read out by CS Treasury, John Badi, last week, even as we anticipate the presentation of the budget state estimates and the finance bill before the National Assembly this week for debate and approval. Now, just before the break, we were taking a look at the budget that's allocated to State House, under the headline that in 9 months of the last financial year, State House had spent 11.2 billion shillings. This is way above what had initially been allocated at 8 billion. Eventually, after this financial year, that will have gone up to 17 billion shillings. And with that issue of state lodges that we've been talking about, and I've just Googled. Of course, there's a Nairobi, Mombasa, Nakuru, which have always been there. Then regional state lodges in Sagana, Kisumu, Eldoret, Kakamega, Kisii, Kitale. Told there's one in Rumuruti.
Yeah.
Which is very close to Nyeri, the Sagana one. And then there's Bungoma, now recent additions, Kwale, Kitui, Imenti Forest, which is a proposed facility. So we're looking at more than 10 in the country. So could this be the reason why the budget for State House is going up? Because these state lodges have to be manned throughout the year. Briefly on that issue, do you think it's an issue, Hesbon, before we go to issues around debt?
I think the issue of having many state lodges, there could be logic in them. I think we've also had a nation where, if you look at the way we are structured, we've had very skewed development across the country. And I think the president has consistently made it clear that he wants every part of the country to feel the presidency and feel development. Probably that could be the reason why having instruments of state being visible in almost every part of the country. And if you look at these new state lodges that have been put up, there is a consistent association with the national celebrations. So if there's a Madaraka Day there, then the events preceding that would either lead to having the presidency being there for 2-3 days, and that has been preceded by either state lodge being set up in such areas, stadium being put in place if there's none, or if there is one, upgrading. And I think we've seen when he went to Homa Bay, what was there was upgraded and made better. When he went to Bungoma, the same happened. When he went to, I think, Kakamega, we've seen it in Kwale, we've seen it in Kitui, and more recently in Wajir. So I think to that extent, that has also increased the cost of running the presidency. And I think rightly so, if the numbers have increased from 8 to now 17 billion, of course we need to look at it in terms of that is doubling the budget. Of course, that budget still has to be approved by Parliament, so whether it's supplementary. But I think that then overall would distort our budget estimates in the overall envelope. And therefore, it's important that anticipation of what we expect to have during the year should be as close as possible to what then the spending becomes at the end of the year, so that you are able to estimate with some measure of accuracy your resource envelope requirements, so that then the revenue raising measures are those that are able to help us as a country focus on some of the areas. Because if you would ask me, there are certain key sectors of the economy that needs to be resourced. A key point is our bread basket in terms of the potential bread basket in the Galana Kulalu area. There are massive chunks of land there that, if properly irrigated, will not only deal with our food sufficiency in the country, but also deal with the potential exports. I've just learned that the PPP project in Galana Kulalu has run into headwinds because initial thoughts were that the investor could recover the money by selling the water to the entities that would set up in that place, which is a very good idea. But I think the numbers are not adding up, and therefore there's likelihood that it has to be a different model from what was initially envisaged. But I think those are the areas we need to put our money into. When you talk about Wajir and the rest of the northern outposts being opened up, for me it's not just about having national celebrations there. We must be very intentional in terms of opening up opportunities towards irrigation, because if a country almost 80% is arid and semi-arid, we must be very intentional. We need water, not rain, in that part of the world.
And you've raised something very important. It's about the planning.
Yeah.
That, and I think it's on one of the dailies, that this supplementary budgets that come in the middle or towards the end of the year, financial year, seem to distort a lot and raises a question about government planning in the initial budget estimates. That for you to double, for any state department, the allocation, the annual allocation, then there must have been something that was missed during the planning phase. Yeah. For the State House budget to initially have been allocated 8 billion, then by the end of the financial year, it's doubled through a supplementary budget. It means that someone somewhere did not plan for this.
Maybe let me add something as Professor chimes in. I think there's also been a paradigm shift in how we've handled this country since post-2024 Gen Z protests. Mm-hmm. There's also been that feeling that, is it that there's a disconnect between the state and the people? Is it that the government is not listening to what the people are saying around many things? Is it that probably the issue of national cohesion and how people are taxed and all the other things are coming to fore? And I think the natural reaction in any government situation is you tend to dissect the problem the way you think it could be, so and maybe you are taking a different direction from what you should take. So you could argue it differently, but the reality is you cannot have supplementary budgets that distorts the budget substantially. Then it therefore means that your budgeting cycle and planning is basically off. So I think it's something that speaks to
if we may go with the last year's budget, the initial budget was about 4.2, 4.3 trillion shillings. But by the end of the financial year, it had gone to about 4.7 trillion. Meaning that there was about 400 billion shillings or close to half a trillion shillings that was never initially budgeted for. The headline on page 8 of the Standard talks about spending fallacy. Supplementary budgets water down main plan and alter projects. That also seems to be a very big problem.
Fred, let me explain. First of all, the budget we have in Kenya is illegal. It is illegal. You know what I call that illegal? Because it does not comply with the law, first of all. That's why I'm so ashamed with the members of parliament. No matter which side is shouting. Like those guys instead of shouting in Thika, just go to parliament and fix this thing from there. Having a budget which has 17% on development, 83% on expenditure is illegal according to the law. And members of parliament sit to listen to it. In some countries, it cannot be tabled. It cannot even be tabled. It will be rejected at the committee level. When I saw the majority leader, minority leader, all the leaders, speakers taking photos with that briefcase, carrying an illegal budget, I was so heartbroken, because that's not supposed to happen. I even saw central bank governor there taking a photo with a legal budget because it was clear it's illegal. Because the law is clear, Fred, isn't it? On how much must go development and how much must go. Secondly, the borrowing. Already we are at illegality. We are at illegality. We shall talk about that. I'm saying even that estimate. Let me talk about this one. Last year they projected that the budget was going to be 4.2. It went to 4.7 trillion. But look, in that budget, the deficit was going to be something like 1.1 trillion. And in the end, when we got in the end, the deficit was 2 trillion. Because of what? KRA did not collect 815 billion. So that went to expand now the deficit. Then with the expenditure growing, it became worse. What I know is that we need fiscal discipline. Fiscal discipline means you must live within your means. Secondly, as budget, implement as per budget. In the first year of President Ruto's presidency, he did 4 supplementary budgets in a year. First of all, that's illegal, because the rule is very clear. You can only do 2. You can't do 4. Because doing 4 supplementary budgets means you don't know what you are doing. You can plan your life. Can you imagine as a husband at home that you can change a budget 4 times in a year? Where you even take kids from this school to that school. You move this, your wife was going to a salon here, you take him the other side. It shows that it doesn't work. And for me, even you talk about the State House budget, Fred, the fundamental problem here is that we have one of the largest ministry in government which needs to be shut down. The largest consumer of money as a means in government called Ministry of Corruption. What I'm trying to say, when during Uhuru Kenyatta, they said they're losing 2 billion per day. Then last year, but one, they said corruption has doubled, meaning we are losing 4 billion per year. We are collecting 9 billion per day. We are losing 4 billion per day. That is 42% of money going to corruption. Control of Budget has talked about budgeted corruption. So even if you are talking about the State House expenditure to...
We're just using State House as an example.
Yes, so State House expenditure, if you ever get the actual expenditure of State House, you'll discover that actually that's 17 billion, maybe 50% are budgeted corruption. They are not actual expenditure. And creating this thing of saying I'm creating state lodges could be a strategy to allocate money anywhere. You see, even we saw last time somebody saying that we are taking money in capitation in a school which don't exist. So some more State House being gazetted there, we don't know. You talk about Rimuruti, have you gone there and seen there's a State House there? And then they say they are protected areas, so you can't go to verify. You get me? Who actually has verified that these state lodges, the money going there actually are going to right places? The other thing which I want to say here is clear, Fred. Kenya do not have a revenue problem. Kenya has expenditure problem. We are spending too much, then corruption problem. Because if you look at this,
why are we spending too much? That's the question. Because okay, fine. Is it? And I raised the question was: is it an issue of planning? I understand now the State Department of Planning is under Treasury now. It used to be a different ministry. It used to be Ministry of Planning, and then Finance was separate. Treasury now combines all of them. Could that be the problem? Or
Fred, clearly, let me put this one very candidly to you. I've told you already, we are having in illegal ways of running the economy. Parliament have lost their role. They are not doing the oversighting because that could have ended right there. If you want to know also, we're having a problem of incompetence in running the economy. Why I'm saying so? When Uhuru left government, our budget was 3.1 trillion, right? Now we are doing 4.82 trillion. That is a 60% growth in budget. But let me flip this to you. Don't call that thing budget, call it expenditure. Because they call it a budget to make it look like it is something good, it's expenditure. How do you grow expenditure? By 60%. While the economy or revenue collection is growing by 4 or 5%. Tell me any business you ever run where your expenditure is growing at 60% while your revenue is growing at 3%, even if you are doing a kiosk or you are running a hospital, or you are running let's say, a hotel, or if you are just running this media house, even TV47, imagine if your revenue is growing at 5%, your expenditure is growing at 60%. We'll come here and find when no one is sitting here. Everyone will be home. So that very misnomer doesn't work. So what I'm trying to say here is that it's not lack of planning. Kenya have one of the most decorated...
You're blaming directly the parliament.
The actual people who need to oversight this matter.
Okay.
And then most importantly, Fred, when we were told that the budget was 4.2 trillion last year, isn't it? Have they given a report of the actual spend? Like, you see, when you're running a company, you do a budget. Like, I'm sure TV47 does a budget, isn't it? Then we go to the financial planning showing actually you bought coffee here, you bought a camera, isn't it? You sent a crew to Mombasa. Actual expenditure. We just pass a budget, then they will ask for another budget to be passed. No one really goes there. And I want to tell you, during this time, and I'm sure CPA, you mentioned it a little bit, I want to be very candid. When Mbadi was writing the budget, I'm aware he was told by his boss, whatever you do with the finance bill or the budget, if anybody goes to the street you lose your job.
As
So they managed us in a certain way.
Who do we blame?
That you don't see what's happening, but actually the same thing that happened in 2024 happened again.
Husband, who do we blame for this?
No, I think, like you rightly mentioned, anytime you have so many supplementary budgets, they speak to lack of adequate planning. However, there are certain unavoidable circumstances.
And the fact that supplementary budgets perhaps don't attract as much scrutiny from the general public as the main budget.
Yes and no, because I think they still go through public scrutiny, maybe not as robust as the main budget, but I think there are also issues we must take note of in any financial year, like the crisis in the Middle East around Iran and Israel. In many ways affected the entire world economy. And that meant relooking at certain projections in terms of even revenue. It also meant that we had to remove certain taxes, like the 8% VAT on fuel. So that in one way or the other will affect the budget because you have to relook at certain things. So there are certain headwinds that you can run into that may be unexpected, but they should be an exception rather than the norm. I think that is important. Secondly, I would also want to state that yes, there are issues of expenditure problem which we need to sort out, and I'm happy if what Honorable Mbadi said during budget reading speech is true, that through enforcement of the e-procurement model, they had saved 36 billion. Whether it was saved because of the system or because there are still entities struggling to adopt it, and therefore the rate of absorption of certain expenditures may have gone down, could also be something we need to look at. But if we can get a report of how many public entities are currently using e-procurement model so that there's visibility around public procurement, that would be good. In terms of single treasury account, which is also part of fiscal discipline space, it would be good to know, is that being employed so that entities do not just hold money and then end up giving them to commercial banks to make money with and still look for money from national treasury. So those are good measures if at all they're there. But I think the other issue we need to pay attention to, and that could be a place where I disagree with the professor, we have an expenditure problem, but we also have a revenue problem. And I want to say it that there is no way an economy such as ours can only register 15% of tax collection to GDP. There is definitely bad manners also amongst us. Government is indisciplined with public spending, but we are also not patriots. You go to a restaurant today, you buy food. By the time you want to leave, when you ask for an ETR receipt, you're almost fighting with the restaurant operators. They don't want to give you that receipt because they will be giving visibility to their transactions where they should pay tax to government. You go to a petrol station to fuel your car, you will struggle to get an ETR compliant receipt. They'll tell you, oh, there's a problem with that machine, it's broken down. But the reality is we're hiding certain things. Go to the entire Isili, it's a very big economy. Go and buy a commodity there. Ask for a receipt. They will tell you, withdraw money there and pay us. So there's a lot of underground business operations, and therefore we are unfairly levying the burden of carrying this country to those who have pay slips who are easy to be targeted by KRA.
Shouldn't we be blaming KRA as a compliance agency?
KRA, there is what they can do. But you see, there must be an enabling legislation for them to do some of these reforms. Some of these legislations have fallen short. Some of the countries we look at, they're able to view what you do in your bank. Banking records are not hidden for tax purposes. But in this country, our culture is so bad that if you start targeting...
You support that proposal for KRA to be allowed to scrutinize
mobile
money or banks transactions?
No, it comes with a rider. It comes with a rider. It's not absolute. If you can demonstrate that it can only be used for purposes of sorting out the tax issues and not to target people in other areas or expose business secrets to other third parties, then that would be okay. But the risk is, go to a country like South Africa. That access is there. But it is controlled access. It's access that gives the Revenue Authority visibility simply for tax purposes. But the other measures, you may not even necessarily go that route. What we need to do is that KRA needs to be capacitated with the resources to roll out enough sensitization campaigns so that when you walk to a restaurant, how many Kenyans, for example, know that there's a nexus between getting an ETR compliant receipt in that restaurant where I'm eating or in that petrol station where I'm fueling my car to the tax collection.
Yes.
Some of us don't know. So there are other measures which are administrative that KRA can still employ before we get there, because there's still trust deficit amongst the populace on how this information can be used. Okay. So it's a good thing, but perhaps its time has not reached. Okay. But what can we do to raise our tax to GDP ratio? Because at 15%, you can't convince me. The global OECD numbers is about 25 to 30%.
All right. On revenue compliance and collection.
When I was a student in Barcelona, in Spain, I went there when I was a young man. So, you know, I was available to date women there. And I discovered when you are about to get married, you go through what's called the prenuptial. And they agree, they want you to even sign how many days will you make love to a woman per week? You understand? And I thought when something which will be given out of love goes even to documentation, then there's something wrong. Why am I trying to say that? Paying taxes should be something a citizen should love to do, isn't it? What encourages that? It's not regulation. It's first of all, how are the taxes used? You get me, Fred? And I'm sorry, go to a country like UK. They are very adhering to...
Prof. Shirley, are you saying that other people, even in the US, pay tax willingly?
No, I'm telling you,
people hide.
Much more. No one likes to pay anything in the first case. Everybody wants to have everything free. Even economics says that when taxes are 0%, everybody will pay, isn't it? When there are 100%, no one will pay. So there must be a certain level that makes people want to pay taxes, isn't it? Now let me tell you, Fred, go to an hotel. I've done saving plan for several hotels. They have 18 taxes and levies to pay just when you are buying a bed. You understand? 18 taxes and levies. I have my friends who run hotels in Nakuru, Naivasha, in Machakos. We are trying to see how can you really survive if for you, when you go to buy a bed, 18 taxes and levies. I'm sure Kenyans who do business are listening to me, and this is the fact. I'm not just somebody who has been doing politics. I've been right in corporate, teaching students in Strathmore who are executive CEOs, listening to their problems. I've done over 1,900 study plans for companies in Kenya. I know what they feel. So when you ask these guys, do you want to pay taxes? They tell you they don't want to pay taxes. Fred, I used to have at least 50 clans to make it to 1,000 study plans, 1,900 study plans in a span of 10 years. I used to have around 50 to 100 clans in a year doing them strategy, isn't it? That figure has fallen to 20. What does that mean? People are suffering. If there are too many taxes, like now, when Kenyans read these taxes may have been increased, everybody looking for how to avoid it, isn't it? Because they're actually too much.
I'm trying to get what you're saying, which direction you're going. Are you saying KRA in setting their targets were a bit of ambitious?
No, the government of Kenya has put too much tax burden on very few Kenyans. Instead of asking ourselves, people should now be forced to pay. Even the same when government of Kenya passed a bill that there will be what you call KRA army, where people will be coming to your businesses to even bombard you, ask you to, you saw that CPA. I even went to court to stop it. That is not the way to go. You get me? There must be a way on which citizens and state relate in a way that the state knows their responsibility and duties, isn't it? Citizens knows their duties and responsibilities, and they pay taxes. Some people are trying to avoid, that's what we talk about tax avoidance. You are trying to avoid, and it's legal to try to avoid taxes. Why do you try to avoid? Because it might make business sink. So Fred, my own analysis is this, and I'm an economist. In Kenya, we have around 1 to 2% who are upper class. And there's about something like 12% of Kenyans who are middle class. That's about 13% of Kenyans who are carrying the other masses, which are 87% hanging on 13%. That's why these 13% must be squeezed and squeezed and squeezed to death. Go to UK. 44% of the British citizens are middle class. About 7% are upper class. That gives you around 51% of people carrying the masses. You go to US, that figure goes to around 57%, carrying 43% of the economy.
What of South Africa?
Come to South Africa. South Africa is doing around 33% of the population carrying the other persons, isn't it? Remember, the per capita income for South Africa is about 7,300. In Kenya, we are doing 2,300. Means a typical South African earns 3 times more than a typical Kenyan. So the problem here is we need to have.
So we agree it's a revenue collection problem.
We need to increase. The way to do it is not by taxing people. We need to increase job creation. That's why I'm telling people.
But there's introduction in the finance bill of some measures to try and widen the tax base.
No. How they are doing it won't work, Fred. Look, we are putting money to do the railway, doing the SGR to Kisumu. You get me, Fred? SGR is another name of railway. Railway reached Kisumu in 1901. You get me? But people still don't have jobs. SGR is standard rail gauge railway, still a railway. Why are we putting money in a railway and there's another railway? We need to put money on primary production, Fred. You get me?
Okay.
And I want to give this example. It's a very bad example, but I can give example.
Very briefly, because we need to move on to the issue of debt.
The housing project is an end user solution, isn't it? There is no other primary, secondary, tertiary before going to housing, isn't it? If the money we are collecting for affordable housing goes to produce large-scale agricultural production like Galana Kulalu, isn't it? You can produce the primary production, there'll be secondary, there'll be tertiary, and therefore people can actually get jobs.
Okay. No, but
the single bullet to the Kenyan problem is create jobs.
Okay.
Anything else is neither here nor there, because the job creation brings taxpayers to the tax bracket to share the tax burden.
Yes. I think Prof has gone very elaborate, but I think the basic facts remain that there are people who are not paying taxes. Whether it's informal nature of our economy, where 80% is informal, but the fact remains that 15% tax to GDP ratio speaks of a systemic problem. The house, we can disagree. But then the issue is, if you are honest about your business trading, why would you be hesitant to give information? So as a country, we must also ask ourselves, what kind of liberties do we want to have?
But is it a Kenyan problem, really? I assume you're disagreeing with whether or not people are willing to pay taxes in the US, for example.
I think naturally, people would not want to pay taxes. That is a human nature. But taxes and death are certain. The only thing is, taxes need to have commensurate services. And I think that is a disconnect we agree on. That part of the reason why we were very happy some years back to say kulipa ushuru ni kujitegemea, and at that point our tax to GDP ratio had risen to about 18%, even though there were also arguments that our GDP had a lot of informal sector that were not captured in, and therefore there could have been certain aspects that were not in place, and therefore we rebased our GDP in 2014. And rebasing means just reworking out the figures, and that is why we moved into a lower middle income country. But the reality is there are certain members of our society that are not paying taxes, and the rest are shouldering the burden. KRA has been taking the easy route. You know me, you know my business, you can get me. You know so-and-so works here, you can get them. But there is a circle of people here, and there are very many. And I gave the example of Isili. The entire economy in Isili is largely under in terms of what happens there.
Black economy.
It's black, they don't pay taxes. And how they do it, there is a setup of M-Pesa. That M-Pesa, when you go there, they'll tell you, you have cash, they give you. If you don't have cash, they'll tell you, withdraw that money there. Now, where we are headed, and I think that's why KRA needs to target M-Pesa transactions as well, for visibility, for business purposes. And when that is targeted, there's a lot of noise. The people who make noise are not the common man here. How many times do you have people deliver through motorbikes, commodities bought online through shops? And when you get there, send money to this account. So the truth is there are people who are doing very well in this economy, and they're not paying their fair share of taxes.
All right.
But it's about the right tax measures that need to be put in place so that that segment is addressed. But as you do that, let us also remember that people want to see government services delivered.
Yes.
If it's about security, can we have a secure business environment that when I close my shop, it's not going to be raided? If it's about education, can I be able to say that when my kids go to school, the quality of education is
that
good,
you can afford it.
And I can afford it, and the students can be able to learn.
Yes.
And if there is support that is required, the same to healthcare.
I don't want us to dwell too much on that. Very briefly, so that we talk about...
actually, Fred, that is the main problem more than the collection. When I was the chair of Peace, Justice in St. Michael's Hotel in Langata, there's a priest who called for a fundraising, and people didn't come in good numbers to give money. He was talking about how tithes was going down and the rest. But I told him, if you give people a report on what this money does, people will actually bring money. Go to churches where people are transparent. Do you know why people give money to Muslim organizations? Because there's a way that money goes to community, and there's a system on which is more structured to get out there. I'm sorry, because I grew up in Mombasa. There's even those people who go to the mosque. They live in a place where you can get free water to drink because it's very hot for the street kids there. You can find a place to sleep. They're more welcoming. They're telling you about what they do with the money. Transparency is key. This government do not get transparency on how they spend the money, but they want transparency on businesses, on how they do things. Lead by example.
Right.
A father should show us, how have we spent our money? Now, if you go ask government for any information, they tell you it is not allowed, this is fill a form, you have to apply, go to court. We go to court, like now we have Safaricom case, to ask government to give us some information regarding Safaricom transaction. So if a government do not want to give you any information about itself, using money you have actually paid it to them, why do they want you to give them information? The solution is this. Let's create digital ledgers for all procurement, digital ledgers for all budgets and expenditure. Let Kenyans know where their money actually go.
Yes,
and Kenyans will pay taxes.
And as far as that is concerned, we can't really fault KRA. E-teams, e-procurement, they've really tried.
They've tried.
Yeah.
I think we need to give credit where it's due.
Yes.
You know, the easiest thing is to bash. But if you were to step into the shoes of these people, it's been 3-4 years since this regime came into power. I would tell you the revenue that KRA raises, as much as still depressed, has been significantly higher.
Yes.
And this is coming at a point when majority of employees today have suffered in the payslip because of the 3 key transformational programs the government has rolled out around social health, around affordable housing, and around long-term social savings. So I think this has reduced disposable income. But even amidst that gloom, the numbers that KRA have posted over time has consistently grown.
Right.
The reason why our appropriation in aid numbers has also grown is because we've also gone through single M-Pesa number in terms of how we do pay for government services. That has also enhanced revenue collection in many ways. So I think what we need to do, we cannot be the most digitally penetrated country in Africa and still struggle to penetrate the informal sector. Yet we say every part of this economy is more or less within the digital space. Yes. So how is it that when it comes now to revenue collection, there's a lot of pushback? And I think for us, we need to appreciate that it takes two to tango. The country and citizenry must step up and pay their taxes, but the government must also enhance accountability, and accountability is across board. One of the biggest pains I have is that if you look at, and I'm an auditor, if you look at the audit reports for our public sector entities, you can discern a very clear pattern that all the state departments in this country at national level are reporting above 60% clean audit reports, which means there could be issues about ABCD, but they are largely reporting positively on their financial reports. Okay. You go to parastatals, the numbers rise slightly to about 67, close to 70%. But when you go to the devolved governments, you're hardly doing 5%. Majority of them have become employment bureaus. And so the money you give them even for development is stuck in paying salaries and feeding the pockets of leaders.
Yes.
Then secondly, their revenues, as we talk about revenue, without adding taxes, Commission for Revenue Allocation has told us that counties can collect 260 billion. That was 2 years ago. They are still hardly collecting 70 billion a year. So clearly, and it's not that the money is not collected. There are counties that you look at how they perform, they're still rivaling the local authorities they took over from.
Right.
So that tells you that if local authorities could pay salaries many years back, we have counties now, despite getting equitable share of revenue, they're still struggling to deliver. And that's why you don't see anything registering development front.
Yes. Back to the budget, the issue now is that because of depressed revenue collection and an expanded expenditure, which could still expand more through supplementary budgets, now we have a fiscal deficit or a budgetary deficit of about 1.14 trillion shillings.
Yeah, 1.14.
Yeah, that has to be plugged somehow. And about 900 trillion of that is through the domestic market.
Yeah.
And that is a big problem in as far as the economy is concerned. It's the main story on the front page of the Star. Tough economy plunging small businesses into loan reliance. Going through the story, you talk about how your small business cannot sustain itself throughout the year because you cannot access credit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how bad is that? And how can we change this? Should we encourage more international borrowing to save local businesses? I don't know. Is that a solution?
Yeah, first of all, for the fundamental problem in Kenya, I've told you, is the structure of the economy. And I don't want to illustrate, I just told you the percentage of people who rely on the rest. And before that figure is sorted, we shall have these challenges. Because why do you think the interest rate in Kenya is 24% thereabout? And actually some of these small businesses go to Shylock, where interest rate can be 1,000%. Can you imagine the interest rate in China is an average of 2.9%? So let's say a coffee farmer, a tea farmer, or any other person who is doing cereals or even just doing flowers or let's say horticulture, who want to export them to the global market, you are borrowing at 24% to compete with the Chinese who are borrowing at 2.9%. Do you know why Chinese have gone to set up flower farms and horticulture in Ethiopia, in Ghana, to plant them there, then compete with the export, Kenyan export in the export market? Is because Chinese, if you're doing some things, there's called Agricultural Bank of China, ABC, Agricultural Bank of China, that gives loan almost at 0%. Why do you think the Chinese are winning contractors in Kenya, beating Kenyan contractors in Kenyan given jobs? Because the banks in China are giving the Chinese contractors almost 0% interest rate loans. So just by having a cheaper loan, a country can be so competitive. And Kibaki did this by simply saying, no domestic borrowing.
By government.
By government, we are going abroad. But you see, the issue is that the level of borrowing we are having now is on the roof, and also we are borrowing for corruption. Like somebody has gone and said...
But we are borrowing nonetheless.
Yes.
So should we encourage more international borrowing to save local businesses?
We should just stop this obnoxious borrowing. And there's a big discussion happening now. I've had Okiya Mtata put up a case in court called odious debt. And I've heard some people like Jim Wanjigi and the rest talking about odious debt. First of all, Fred, let me clarify that there's nothing like odious debt. The debt we have is not odious. But the debt we have not been used for the interest of the country. Let me explain what an odious debt. Odious debt is a debt borrowed by an illegitimate regime. And the example, the odious debt case comes in the around 1860 something, when the US government was colonized by Spain. And Spanish government borrowed money from Cuba to colonize America. When American government came, they rejected to pay that odious debt because they said that debt was not borrowed by a legitimate regime. So I'm asking those fighting for debt to look for debt review. Where do the men really go? And secondly, why I'm calling it corruption, Fred, this corruption is not like these people have mastered how to say with a pen, and a Bible and a suit. So when they are doing all these things, somebody has a Bible, they have a suit, and they have a pen. How do they do it? All these leaders, President Uhuru Kenyatta had a bank, isn't it? The current president has a bank. So you find that domestic borrowing goes to their own bank. And because they know the interest rates are very high, and they are paying very high, they prefer whereby the left side of the left hand signs that the government is lending money, borrowing money to a bank. Then the right hand signs that my bank is the one borrowing to the government. And that's where corruption goes. And when you look at the total deposit in Kenya, all Kenyans deposit money in banks, right? Total deposit in Kenya is about 8.2 trillion Kenya shillings, right? From Kenyans. But the total domestic debt is about just the same amount, is about 7.9 trillion, meaning Kenyans collect their money, bring to the bank, where they should be getting this money from now to do their businesses.
They can't.
Yet the government comes to take all of it. They sort of call outcrowding them. When you go to a bank, Fred...
It's the solution to that I'm looking for now.
The solution is simple.
Yeah, because they're borrowing either way.
The solution is simple, Fred. We must go back to produce. So this money we are collecting, the money we are borrowing, it is not going into production.
Yes.
When economy cannot produce...
Businesses are now forced to go to Shylocks, and they get loans at crazy interest rates, 20, 30, 40%.
The Uhuru Kenyatta government talked about interest rate capping, and it proved to be wrong. It didn't work. You remember that? You remember that incident? I have told you, Fred, let me now say that...
I want a solution to stop or slow down on domestic borrowing, because that has the other effect of affecting businesses directly.
I think the easier way to look at it is that the right signal for the private sector for the commercial banks to lend to the private sector is first to reduce the budget deficit. I think that's the first thing that the government needs to do. And there are two ways of reducing the budget deficits. Either you depress and rationalize your expenditure, and that's what you call the consolidation bit, or you be also more on the aggressive side on the revenue mobilization, so that you plug the leakages. When you plug the leakages, the revenue collection goes up. Now, when that happens, the gap is narrowed, and therefore what you need to borrow is reduced. Secondly, there's a long-term strategy the government has employed, and many people may not be seeing it, is that for an economy to function well, there must also be a saving culture. We have an economy where our saving culture has been near zero. And globally, we talk about China as being able to lend us, but Chinese have saved 42% of their GDP. Kenya, we have saved hardly 12.5%. In fact, it's the last 1-2 years that number has gone up. And when that number has gone up, it means that we have raised, for example, the overall value of NSSF has gone from about 300 billion to 700 billion in terms of what it has been able to mobilize in long-term retirement savings. Now, I'm trying to envision, in 3 years, if you were to maintain the 6% deduction of our salaries and 6% employer plug-in, it means that you can easily be at a level of 1.5 trillion or thereabout in value of NSSF, money that they can invest in government securities and other investments that give value to the mwananchi. Now, I would rather, if government has to borrow, rather than have commercial banks and insurance companies being the biggest holders of government debt instruments, that should be the NSSF and you and I who are able to save, because the economy is thriving. If we are able to depress the government borrowing in the domestic market, we allow more money to circulate, we allow the banks to lend for businesses to expand.
Are Kenyans ready for that? Do they understand that they can safely lend to government through their pension? And they would still get their retirement money, because that is the panic that there is.
I think, of course, that panic is there, but the records now look different. It's about the National Assembly recognizing that we did not just pass a law that allows each employee to save 6% of their money, but we are also pushing a lot of revenues to National Social Security Fund, NSSF, and therefore we need to have more scrutiny in how NSSF invests, which kind of investment options they put the workers' money in, and the return on that investment.
Failure to which Kenyans will actually get a problem.
There should be consequences. And therefore, for me, it's not about that investment because it's unavoidable. You cannot work and save 200 shillings and expect to retire and live. And the reality is 40% of those who retire today die within 2 years because they cannot survive with the money they saved. You have worked for 40 years, for 20 years, 30 years. Then you retire with 500,000 shillings or 600,000 shillings. So what needs to happen is that we need a combination of things. We must improve on our saving culture, but the government must also have a deficit that does not crowd out the private sector from lending. Of course, over time, as we try to plug the gap, the biggest indicator is found in the current government's manifesto. If you look at the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, they spoke about we have 5.5% deficit to GDP. We plan to reduce it to 3.3% by the time we get to year 5. Now that is a clear plan that shows that you want to reduce the deficit and free.
Same manifesto, not a plan.
Yeah. So now it was in their manifesto. Now unfortunately,
basically their plan.
It's actually, no, whichever way you look at it, that was their wish list. Where are they today in that journey? We are talking of 5.5 now. So we have not moved an inch. Okay. So technically, they veered off that initial plan or the promise they gave to the Kenyan people. Yes. And you could argue that certain headwinds came along the way that could have derailed them, but the reality is they are off the rail. Okay. So how do they get back? For me, there are just those 3 issues I mentioned. Reduce the deficit, and you can reduce the deficit through fiscal consolidation and enhanced revenue mobilization. And then number 2, you can then go to the level where you also help the country have laws that allows us to have a saving culture.
And use our own savings.
And use our own savings,
Fred, yes. I want to disagree economically with him, not in any other way, but economically with him, because I've told you, we're having a revenue leakage of 42% of that budget. 42% of that budget is going to corruption, which is the easier one to do.
Is that researched?
Yeah. It is. The figures are there.
Where is that research?
The figures there. The Auditor General, the Controller of Budget, says this thing is all the reports, isn't it? Budgeted corruption. It's there. It's not Fred Ogola's making. And the numbers are there. Why don't we start with that one? That's the easiest one. Just stop corruption. That's what I'm telling Fred.
42% is not realistic.
No, it is.
I would love to see that report.
No.
Because that would be almost like 20. Over 2 trillion shillings.
Fred, do you believe on what's called extrapolation? You are an economist. You are in financial extrapolation, isn't it? They said we lose 2 billion per day.
Is that scientific?
You get me? And the budget corruption has shown. Auditor General herself, Controller of Budget herself says that in the budget, she's paid double what actually she receives. And she said it. How many people are being paid double, but the double they don't receive, but the double is on paper, isn't it? Where the money goes. We can go on. Fred, I've gone to, I think so, actually that news was put here on TV47. When I took a petition in court, in Senate, illustrating how much money we have lost since independence by regime. And I name scandal by scandal. I'm not speaking out of the blues. Is in the Senate. If you look at the library for TV47, it's there. Under Kenyatta, we lost 250 billion to corruption in 15 years. Under Moi, we lost 1.2 trillion to corruption in 24 years. You get me? Under Kibaki, we lost 608 billion to corruption. Under Uhuru Kenyatta, we lost 610 billion to corruption. The current government, we cannot account for 3.7 trillion.
That's a lie.
You understand?
Bro.
No, you can say, because maybe you're a brother of the president, what I'm trying to say here is I cannot put a petition in the Senate based on baselessness, isn't it? It's, you can go and look for it and read for yourself, because Kenyans don't want to read, they just shout, that's a lie. Okay. How would I be lying and I put the petition?
We'll check,
it was received by Dan Manzo in front of the Senate. This is on record. People, in God we trust, the rest just bring your evidence. If it's a lie, bring evidence a lie. Me, I have evidence I put in the Senate, and I'm quoting the Senate. The Speaker has it. I can send you
over 3 trillion.
3.7.
Of revenue raised?
Yes. In the years the President has been there.
I can see we only have 5 minutes.
So Fred,
yes.
I repeat, if we stop corruption, by killing the Ministry of Corruption, which is the largest ministry, go and remove EACC. It's the most useless organization we have, because every thief is approved by EACC. When you want to run for president, you want to run for MCA, any position, CS, parastatal head, you are cleared by EACC. Why do we have corruption? EACC has received a budget of 58.5 billion. In the last 15 years they have operated, but only recovered 28 billion. These institutions are the ones that are washing corruption. We call them washing machines. They need to be cleared off the system. And lastly, we need to remove this unnecessary expenditure we are having and prioritize where are we putting money. If you put money on something that cannot cough money back, that money is lost. We cannot be saying, for example, we have a budget of 4.82 trillion and there is no job going to be created. Last year, the CS was clear. We have frozen employment. Young people are going to college. They are graduating 1 million per year, yet there's no job creation. Then you are sitting back here and saying, we just need to tighten tax collections. Okay. It's a joke. It's a joke of the century.
We have 2 minutes for you for your final comments.
I think my final comments are that I would urge the government first to ramp up the revenue collection, and they can do this through enhanced communication in terms of what the people need to know about revenue leakages that they can help prevent. KRA should also consider in a very big way relooking at how they collect the property tax, especially our rental income. They need to start by just segmenting even one area of this city, even if it is a CBD. Can you have these properties properly documented so that then block by block enhance revenue, because there's a lot of leakage in the rental space. Now, in terms of rationalizing government expenditure, I think we need to reconsolidate and ensure that all government agencies are in e-procurement space so that we're able to have visibility of government procurement and reduce spending on unnecessary areas that can help the country save on its resources. Beyond that, I think as a citizenry, we all have a responsibility to be good citizens, but also demand accountability. In one measure, let's demand accountability for the public resources we give to government, both devolved and national, but also do our part as citizens and ensure that we pay our fair share of taxes. But as a civic citizen of this country, your responsibility does not end with voting. You must hold those who we elect accountable for the use of our public resources. And I think that is a responsibility all of us must do, but of course within the confines of the law, because we have a nation to keep, but that nation must be run according to the dictates of the law, and we must all, as good citizens of this country, ensure that we play our part.
All right.
My 1 minute is to say that the Kenyan problem is economic. Let us not politicize the economy. I know there's something called political economy, but the Kenyan problem is economic, and the silver bullet is to create jobs. That will reduce pressure on everybody. It will cure the inflation issue. It will improve the purchasing power of the Kenyan shilling. It will be able to ensure that we reduce youth unemployment. It will make us share the tax burden, and therefore it won't be felt by everybody.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Fred Ogola, who's an economics and governance expert, also a presidential candidate, and FCPA Hesbon Omolo, governance expert, an economics expert as well. Asanteni sana for this. We continue dissecting that budget statement and the bills that we anticipate, the budget estimates, the finance bill. They'll be presented before the National Assembly this week for debate, and eventually they will be passed, or a few amendments probably. But serious questions arise. Why are we spending so much in State House? Is the president traveling too much? What happens to this domestic borrowing by government? Is there a way that we can get out of it? Plus other issues around the budget making process. Why do we keep expanding our budget even after planning for a whole year? These are just some of the things that we'll continue talking about this week. The headlines today are as varied as they come. Nafuu ya peni mbili, masuala ya mafuta, tough economy plunging small businesses into loan reliance, ID cards, auction, rapists roam free as DCI hunt Gen Zs. These are just some of the dailies today. I don't think we have any one big story apart from Irongo Kangata joining Linda Mwananchi. That features on all the front pages today. One of the biggest political stories. But everything else, everyone has gone with their own creativity. Tomorrow, let's hope for better headlines. My name is Freddie Ndimuli. As I leave you in studio, I leave you in the safe hands of the Monday Blitz team to tell us more about the World Cup 2026. Good morning.